Okay, let's start the meeting.
Okay, hang on. Okay, thank you. Okay,
Are we live?
yeah.
All right. Then now I gotta see where to share again.
Thank you for taking that over. The chairman really should be the host anyways, but just in case my connection kicks out, you know,
Yeah,
I'll get back on, but that way you could keep going. There we
okay.
go.
Well, everyone should see the agenda. Is that the case?
Yes.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. So we'll start the meeting. Architecture Licensing Board 7/16/2021. It's 9:02. This is David Barkin, Chair. We have Lorianne, Angela, and Twig on the line right now. We have a quorum. I don't believe Phil is on the line yet, if he's going to be coming. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from last time?
Yes.
Any
Yes.
comments?
No.
I have one comment on this resolution 2021-04 had to do with interior designers. It said Mr. Barkin is still cynical on this matter. I may have said something about being cynical, but I think the meeting should reflect that I have some objections to this matter.
Okay,
It's a little bit clearer
shall
than
I-
just being cynical, I think.
so I should just put Mr. Barkin still has a
Has some objections on this matter. I voted accordingly, so. Okay. So with that change, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last time?
I move to approve them.
who's
I'll
that?
second Angela.
So was that Lorianne made the motion or Twig?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Lorianne seconded by Angela. Comments or concerns of any person present today? Do we have anybody that would like to make any comment or concern? I don't know, Bob, can you actually look at the guests and see if they have anything or no?
You know, I can't right now because your screen is kind of blocking that area. Can you see if, to answer your question, no. Can you see if Leslie is on as a attendee? Maybe you can promote her to panelist? Oh, she
Yes,
is there.
she
Okay.
is.
Okay.
She is there.
Now I could see, hang on, attendees, panelists. And she should be. Leslie, you can come on, right? You're muted.
You're muted.
I can.
There we go.
Yeah, you're on.
I'm
You're
on.
on.
I chose to mute myself until I need to speak.
Okay, no problem. Just make sure you're on.
Okay. Leslie, just going to hold off a little bit. We're also waiting for Phil maybe joining us, but I'm not sure. So let's just go through the agenda. Without any other comments present, I'll go to the DCP Investigation Division Complaint Status Report. I don't know if Pamela or Jamel want to take that. I will put it up on my screen.
Good morning, Pamela Brown from the Director of Investigations. As usual, I will have Janita Hamill, Supervising Special Investigator, report out for the work for the quarter.
Okay,
Good morning,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members and guests. Okay.
Is it sharing? Yes. So let me get the There we go.
This is the report that I ran, starting with the start date of January 1st, 2018 through the ending date of June 30th, 2021. And as always, I've told Mr. Chairman, you and your board, I have to do that in order for it to go backwards in time to reflect all the older cases that you are interested in.
Yeah, thank you. And there is nothing older than January of 2018. Is that correct?
So far, that's correct. The legal has addressed the older files. And I think they've Paulette, Ann, and the attorney has reported out on different times about those activities. And this is all that I have coming up on the report right now.
Okay. And I know that Paul is not going to be with us. Paulette is not going to be with us today. She has a conflict, so we won't get any kind of explanation from legal as to terms of status, I don't believe, on this. Anybody have any questions about the list here? Angela, Twig, Loran?
No,
Nope.
No?
no,
No, thank you, David.
Okay, then, Janita, that was easy. Pamela?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I think this is the first time that it's been easy and simple and cut and dry. So
We appreciate that.
thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for the update.
no, you're quite welcome.
And our next chance to chat will be in September.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll have Paulette there. She can comment on open, the status of the things that are in her group. All right, then back to the agenda. We're at item 4, legal division items, and I think maybe we can begin to speak about why Leslie joined us today, and would that be appropriate, or should I create a specific agenda item for this, Bob?
No, I think it certainly could come under legal division. Either way, it can go under legal division items.
In a way, this is a continuation of a discussion that we had under new business that didn't carry over, which had to do with the letter to our members. I'm sorry to scroll through here. I'm just trying to find it. Oh, this is 6G, which we talked about last time, and we talked about this. But the problem, so here's the issue right now, is new statutory language was passed, which now creates somewhat of a conflict with the regulations that were passed. So the statutes, the statutory language indicates that continuing education units need to be recorded. And I'm not, Leslie, you can correct my language here, but in essence, the period of reporting is 3 months prior to the renewal date. That was the change that was made. So that would mean that architects would be reporting their CEs to the state for a period beginning May 1st, ending April 30th. Our regulations indicate that the CEs are recorded on a calendar year basis. And that is our preference currently, because for the vast majority of architects, they'll be using transcript services such as through AIA that are already set up to report on an annual basis. And that is the way that CEs are reported to those professional organizations. It seemed to be the most consumer-friendly way of managing that would be to base it on the same time period that's used by other professional organizations that we're going to rely on to a certain degree for reporting of CEs. Does anybody have any questions about that, about what I just said, or the logic behind it? Leslie, can we get an adjustment to the statutes in the next cycle? Rather,
We can talk about that and doing that. Yes, for now, the law that just passed supersedes the regulations that you have. So for now, this new law needs to be adhered to. The purpose of this, just so everyone knows, is we're having a real problem with our credentials that require CEs and the credential holders completing them upon renewal. And so our licensing division asked that we move all CE due dates, if you will, completion dates to 3 months prior to renewal, so that if a licensee hasn't renewed, there's a 3-month window between the renewal date and when they're the deadline for them to catch up if there's an issue. We have spent a considerable amount of time, staffing resources. Legal division has spent a lot of time on chasing, credential holders who have not completed their CEs, but go and renew anyway. And so we are still completing, and I know it's a different category, a different license, they're different licenses, but the plumbers and the electricians both require CEs. And we did an audit more than 2 years ago, and we're still not finished because so many were out of compliance, because so many do not complete the CEs even upon renewal. And so the solution that the licensing division suggested was that we standardize this across the board and make these renewals due 3 months prior. So I would prefer to have a more extensive conversation and include the licensing division to figure out solutions then, because carving, you won't be the only ones who want to be carved out of this. And at the end of the day, we're just going to end up right back where we already are. And it's a problem for our licensing division and our legal division. We're spending a lot of resources on compliance in this area. And in as you've, I can't, is it right here? There's something right here, right, in your minutes about the reminding licensees that they need to complete their CEs. So we're having real challenges across the board with this.
Well, the reason for the agenda was because we haven't implemented this yet. This is going to be the first year.
Right.
And
no,
it will be effective next year.
Right.
That's why we wanted to recommend.
Right, and I know we just updated these regs last year, so I understand. I wish that we had a conversation ahead of time. This was something driven by the licensing division, and we should have. You're not the only license category that has a conflict as a result of this with regs. So we do need to figure out where those conflicts exist and the best way to resolve them. And at the same time, try to figure out, well, I think again, we need to try to figure out a different sort of way to deal with this aside from, if your regs though had the CEs due by calendar year.
Yeah.
So that they were, and your renewal is, when is your renewal?
July 1st. I'm sorry, July 30th, 31st.
July 31st.
Right, so it
So,
was
I
6
mean,
months
there's
prior. I
a
mean,
significant amount of time between as long as it's the right order, and then there's a significant amount of time between the due date of the CEs and the renewal date of the license. So I think we can, I think we just need to, our agency, I have to sit down with licensing and with legal, and we need to go through all of the licenses that require CEs and figure out a better way. I think that, the goal was to try to standardize this, but that's not going to work. But it will, just so you know, when we attempt to fix this, if we fix it the way that you would like it fixed to go to what you had intended, and I appreciate that, no one consulted with you, and I apologize. But when we do that, whether it's, with you or accountants or anyone else, it's going to end up once again where everybody's different with their renewal dates, and of course they are different with renewal dates, but their CE dates are all over the place in terms of when they're due, and that gets really, it's not easy for the licensing division, right? Because just imagine you've got some licensees where their renewals are due 3 months prior to renewal, others that are due by calendar year, still others that are due at a whole different time if everybody gets carved out of this in different ways. And that becomes challenging since we have so many credentials. But we can work on it. We have time still since it's only July.
So I think it's fine to have the conversation with the licensing division. I think that's appropriate to come up to a resolution. I think, yeah, this did sort of surprise us, and it also is contradictory to what we've communicated in the past. And it gets to this, now I have to write a different kind of memo, I think, to remind people to get their CEs for the first time, and that it's not at what we told them previously, and that they'll have to, well, we still haven't even figured out any of the logistics because it's more on a policy side in terms of all this.
No, I understand.
It is still a year away.
I apologize. Things were moving very quickly this year, and it was an odd, sort of session with half of this or most of it happening remotely. So
yeah, no, I understand. Plus, you had all that cannabis stuff you guys were dealing with,
and don't forget sports wagering too.
Sports wagering too.
Yeah.
So I understand that you guys were particularly busy at the legislature this year. But we still need to resolve this, and we're not actually looking at data or anything until a renewal next year.
Yeah.
But we are telling people that they need to complete their renewal this year. So in essence, I might be able to say something to essentially that focus in on that 3-month thing, because that, like you say, that's the law. That's what we have to communicate now. We're not going to make a statutory change.
Right.
It would be until next session, and that means it wouldn't be in place until whenever, next May or whatever.
Right. I mean, thinking about it that way, thinking about next session, change won't take effect until at least probably not until next May.
Right.
So the session adjourns the first Wednesday in May. So, and they do everything at the end usually. So our bills generally do not pass until, the final week and get signed by the governor.
Well, so can we say for our September meeting, or even previously, if we need to have an internal meeting and I could attend as chair and discuss it with your folks?
Yeah. Yep. I'm just.
So let's have a meeting so we can report out in September.
And we can meet early prior to your September meeting.
Yeah, I think we should, and then we can report out in the September meeting. All right. Bob, can you help coordinate that, please?
It's okay. I've got it. Because if we're meeting, well, who do you want in the meeting before the September meeting?
Well, I think it's you or a representative.
No, I mean,
from
who
legal.
from your board? Sorry.
Anybody else from the board want to be present there, or do you trust me to manage this.
Of course we trust you, David.
Thank you.
There's Phil. Thank you, Phil.
Okay.
You
Then
can
I
handle
would
it.
say
David.
just me.
Okay, then I'll figure it out and send an invitation around.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. I appreciate it. You appreciate your coming on today for this.
Oh, of course. I'm sorry about this.
No, it's,
We'll get
happens,
past it.
but thank you.
It's helpful to know the competing issues around this, so thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, and I
All
will,
right.
this is Angela. Leslie, I will say that, we had great conversations about implementing this language and, expected it to be the calendar year, but we all acknowledged at that meeting that we didn't know how this was going to actually be monitored, regulated, from a logistics standpoint at the time. So.
Yeah, I mean, what happens so often, and we all do it. I certainly am guilty of it, as evidenced by this very issue today. But the licensing division, even it happens with all of the legislative stuff usually. I really try, but the licensing division sort of, as things are moving really quickly during the legislative session, or when we're going, or where we are working with boards to amend regulations, all of these things, they sometimes we forget about the licensing division, and they are, they're the ones who have to implement everything. And so, then we get to this point where the session, before the session starts and we're putting a legislative agenda together, then Mike Elliott comes to me and he has this list of things he wants fixed, and it's all based on everything that has been done, a lot of it over the years and not more recent, but he says, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. We need to fix these things because, it's not working in our division. And so, I try now to bring him into the conversation before, but I don't always remember, and other people don't always remember. And so that's why we are where we are with this issue.
And I did run into Rich earlier in the week here in Hartford, and he's also very enthusiastic and he brought up CEs to me and how we manage this. So he's very tuned into those next steps, how that's all going to get managed. And I don't think we as a board really want to create an administrative burden for the department either. So I think all that's part of the discussion as to how we actually manage the audits and not, it may be different than the way you handle, presumably different than the way you would handle some of the trades as well. So,
Yeah.
So there are bigger discussions that need to happen here beyond just the timing. It's the actual mechanics of how this is going to happen that we haven't really tackled. So that's good. That'll be a good part of that discussion as well.
Absolutely.
All right. So should we move on? Are there other issues from the legal division that we should be discussing now? I think without Paulette and I think Leslie was here specifically for this, unless you have something else, Leslie, to discuss.
No, I think I hope you've had a chance to review the rest of the language that passed. And I know that,
Well,
specifically
for us, it was mostly the actual implementation of fines for not meeting the
right.
CE.
Well, there was that. There's that, but there's that, which but there's also the provision with interior designers.
That's correct. That's a separate item on our agenda.
Okay. Well, the bill,
I don't know.
Removes the licensing requirement for you all. So
We actually want to report out on. I'm just trying to see where it is on the agenda. Oh, here it is, 5A, update on, it's under old business, which is where we're at right now, actually. Some of this was how is this going to happen within the department, and that, Bob, we were looking to you to give us some feedback. If we're not going to be asked in December to renew our interiors license.
Yeah, I honestly don't know where that stands right now. It was a proposed, it's like, you went back a while back as a statutory change, but because of the overlap and what, that architects automatically qualified anyway, it was just a matter of, them applying and approving the application. So we're trying to, I don't know where it is right now.
Can I just jump in? Sorry. So
Please.
Yeah.
architects were required to get the license, right? That was the issue,
Well, you kind of opted in,
right? You had to fill out the paperwork. So you had
Yeah.
to, even though it was kind of ridiculous. So now a change has been made in 20-295B that says that was in that's in House Bill 6100, Section 6. That says an architect licensed in the state may perform the work of an interior designer as prescribed in Chapter 396A, meaning you no longer have to go and get that other credential. You can just, if you're licensed as an architect, you can do the work, the interior designer work, without having to get another credential. Your license, your architectural license alone takes care of that.
Does
But
anybody
can you
see,
call
like,
yourself an interior designer is really the
Right.
question.
I'm sorry? No,
Can
you're
you call
calling
yourself an interior
architect.
designer?
You're not
Leslie,
calling
I think-
yourselves interior designers. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, but I think what Phil is saying, I was going to say the same thing. Architects have always been able to perform whatever an interior designer can do. I think it was a use of the title. I think it was just a formality by filling out that registration certificate for interior designer. It allowed that applicant to use the title registered interior designer. And that's, I think, Phil, I think that's what you're saying with the architects, right? By filling that out, they can also now add that onto their title as, licensed architect, registered interior designer. It was just use of that title and not so much, it wasn't, what the duties were, correct?
No,
I agree with you, Bob.
okay. So my understanding was, and I did not dig through this. This is something that, this was a change that Julianne wrote and explained to me the purpose of. And so my understanding was that you, maybe within your license, the description of what you can do, the scope of work includes descriptions that involve interior design work. Is that correct? I will have to go and read the statutory language more carefully because frankly, I didn't. But the purpose of the change was so that you did not need to get this credential anymore, the separate credential. So I will, hold on, I can actually, just 1 minute, but yes, I think you can still, I think you could say that you are an architect and interior designer without, you certainly don't need the credential based on the statutory change, which says you can perform that work. If you can perform the work, then you can say you are one. But hold on.
I think that's the essence of it. It was like, there was this administrative step that we all qualified for anyhow. So it's like, are you going to opt in and actually do it or not? And it creates a paperwork burden on your side. You're not earning any income from it because it was all just, we were already grandfathered in.
But there was no fee, correct?
There's no fee. So
Hold on.
the idea is, it's like, so
But there
consistent
was a
with the
credential,
statutory.
and yeah, you didn't, to go through the process of having to get this other credential, even though you didn't have to pay for it, was
Right.
something we were trying to fix. And that
Right,
was.
so
what
that it
this
just
was for.
flows automatically. If you're an architect, you can also call yourself a registered interior designer. That was, I think, the thought without going through, if you meet the criteria as an architect, then you are automatically considered in Connecticut.
But think about it from the consumer standpoint. So if somebody wanted to hold both titles, right, not necessarily the credential, but they wanted to be able to call themselves and market themselves as an architect and an interior designer, and then the consumer goes on the DCP website to see if they're licensed in both categories, will they be able to still do that?
Right. I think Leslie's going to come back on in a second.
Yeah, I don't, again, my read of this is that you can do it. I just talked to Julianne, she agrees. So you can call yourselves interior designers based on the
Will-
statutory change.
Will it show up on the roster for interior designers that all architects will get swept into that?
We can make that happen.
I think that's the key. It's like if somebody a consumer does research, this person calls themselves an interior designer and an architect, do they show up on both lists if they were to drill down into that?
Yeah.
I think that's the key.
So the credential still exists as a separate number, an IDE number like it does now, Leslie, or will?
No.
No, it'll just be a title.
For interior design work?
Yes.
No, because they don't need that credential anymore.
So it just should be that when somebody goes into the database, whatever system that is, I don't know what you guys use, and they do a query on interior design, you'd end up with a list that includes both those with the IDE certification or registration, and also architects, all the
Correct.
architects would list as well.
That's the way it's gonna happen. I will talk with Bob Perel, who does, that work for us. I don't see why he can't do that, but I'll make sure, I'll let you know if there's an issue.
All right, Bob, so we need to carry this forward, this issue.
Yep. May I say one more thing? May I ask Leslie one more question, please?
Yeah.
So Leslie, this change has been made and it's a part of HB 100?
Yes. No. Oh, I'm not muted. Sorry. This change has been made and it's a part of, it was in House Bill 6100.
6100, sorry.
Section 6 of
6100.
House Bill 6100.
Thank you.
All right. So let's 5B. As far as I know, Bob, unless you can give us some kind of an update, I don't think anything's happened with this.
5B?
Yeah, minority designation is considered the DAS relative to firms practicing architecture.
I have not heard anything on that, David. No.
Yeah. I think I need to create this handshake between DAS legal, procurement legal and consumer protection. Leslie, I don't know if you're aware of this, and I'm not sure exactly. I think if it's more of a Paulette thing or more something that falls into your camp. And Julianne is still out is not, right? She's back?
She's back, but David Cousins is acting legal director, so she's totally focused on writing me. She's dealing right now with the sports wagering regs and then turning straight to recreational cannabis. So she is back in the office now, just so you know. But yeah. So what's the issue?
Well, the issue is firms register with DAS I guess you call it pre-qual or whatever, well, with the whole minority program, minority designation.
Okay, yeah.
And their rules differ. So somebody can become a minority, let's say you're an architectural business and they only look for 51%, majority interest that doesn't align with the corporate requirements under the architectural. So in order to be an architectural, say, company, you'd have to have 2/3 ownership by architects. And that's obviously a higher burden than 51% to be considered a minority company. So we had an instance where a firm that is from a management side is run by an interior designer, but the architectural side, the majority shares are by an architect. So they're an architectural company, but the architectural company, the shares as defined by ownership under that is not a minority. So how can you both be a minority architectural firm and not be a minority architectural firm? It's just.
Well, I would say two things. I mean, just from 1,000 feet, we don't have anything to do with the minority designation issue at all.
I know.
And it's a very dicey issue. And in terms of, how the language that exists has come to be, there are a lot, and it's just, and as you know, it's not in our within our realm at all. It's, so that's first. So to the extent there is there's conflicting language, and I get it, there is, because their threshold for being a minority owned firm is lower than the threshold that's required to be an architectural firm, right? You're 75% have to be licensed architects.
Well, 67, but yes.
Oh, I thought it was, okay, 67. That's the other, again, standardized. None of this is every
Profession is
every
different.
company, accountants are different from architects, are different from engineers. So they're all different. So in any event, if the ownership designation for architectural company requires that 75 or 67% are architects, I'm just thinking this through, then there's also a requirement that you can't be a minority owned firm unless you're 51% ownership. Then the owner, it's just a lower threshold. So 51% of the ownership needs to be, you still can't be an architectural, you still can't be a company without 67% of the ownership being licensed architects. So
this is just, it gets more nuanced than that. In this example that I'm using, the ownership is by an architect. It's just not, that person individually is not a minority. But when they go to DAS, they simply say, they come up with a management agreement that says this person has managerial control. It's the minority person who has the
percentages. I guess I'm kind of a little confused with it, because the percentages in our definitions are being adhered to be an architectural company, correct?
That's right.
But they also happen to have, and it's different from, but they also happen to have ownership with people who qualify as minority.
Well, it gets into, what do you define as sort of, this is the problem, is like, what's corporate control? By most it's based on share ownership, right? I do think this is an issue with DAS, but
it's
I
not,
also,
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't think this is an issue. First of all, it doesn't really conflict in that DAS is making that determination. I don't know how they're doing it, how they're determining it. I definitely don't want to get into figuring that out, and we don't need to, and we can't anyway, and it's not like anyone would listen to us. But at the end of the day, we will continue to follow our statutory requirements for architectural owned companies and who, and what the ownership composition must be.
if nothing else, it might be helpful to have somebody at a DCP help define, just in a memo form, this is what an architectural firm is, and it's just reading the statutes basically. An AE firm is this, and an A firm is this, and because that defines what.
Yeah, we cannot possibly be the only agency in this situation. I can't imagine. And it's certainly within our agency. I can off the top of my head think of 3 license categories where this is an issue then that do in fact, all of which, would definitely, deal with state contracting, etc.
I think the state needs to be consistent in how it defines things. And otherwise, you have people that
except for this is kind of different. You can have requirement on our end that 67% of the owners must be this. And on the other hand, in addition to that, you can say, okay, 67% are licensed architects. And oh, by the way, also of that 67%, 51% must be meet the definition of whatever the definition is of minority, and to be considered a minority of business. And whatever, you could take the whole 100% ownership, make sure 67% of it is licensed architects. And you can still you can also look at that same 100%, that same pot, and say, okay, but 51% are fall within, meet the definition of
If that was the case, there wouldn't be a problem here. But in this case, it's not 51% owned by a minority. It's 0%.
But then that's not us, and that doesn't conflict with us. It just means.
Yeah, no, I
DAS
know.
is
I'm
doing
looking for some
something
help here to help get clarity, because this gets into it creates confusion on contracting issues. It's like, we're trying to hire a minority firm, a minority architecture firm here, let's say at the state. Are they a minority firm when they don't meet when the minority doesn't meet the regulations for a firm based on DCP requirements?
I don't understand. You can't be an architectural company without 67% of the ownership being licensed architects, period, the end. So we have our credential. They have to start with that.
Yeah,
they can't, how else do they start? You can't go to DAS and say, I'm an architectural company if you don't have a credential from us.
Leslie, you gotta let me
This
finish.
does not seem to be an ALB issue at all. I mean, there's nothing wrong with our regulations and our statutes. This is 110% a DAS issue. We could talk about it all day, but what Leslie said is 100% right.
I'm sorry, David. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm just looking for actually help defining what it is, because I agree with everything that you and Phil said, right? And it's nothing wrong with our statutes, but where it gets weird is, I mean, just think if you are a minority architecture firm, it's 2/3 owned by an architect who is also a minority and has that designation, and you lose a contract because somebody else got themselves designated as a minority company, but the minority participant wasn't a professional, and so therefore fell within that 33% ownership, not the 67% ownership. And that's the situation we're dealing with.
So David, don't you just have to change the language that it has to be an architectural corporation as in addition to being minority, like not either or?
Yeah, I don't know. This discussion really, like, I agree, it's a DAS, how they define minority, but I think it needs to be consistent with how we define an architectural firm, so there's no loopholes, which is what I'm dealing with right now.
Agreed, but the loophole's on DAS's end.
I understand, Phil, but I can't get anybody to, we should have I guess the ALB, I'm ready just to dispense with this because I can't seem to get anybody to understand that it is a licensing issue and it's a contracting issue. But I'm not going to conflict everybody on this.
I understand it's a contracting issue, a DAS contracting issue. I'm not so sure I understand how it's a licensing issue. If DAS, if they're looking for a licensed architectural company, then that's that. We have the roster and we have the requirements for ownership, and that's what we follow and that's what happens. If you're telling me that what they're doing is actually choosing firms that aren't actually licensed architectural companies.
That's not what I'm saying. It's a licensed architectural company, but the way that DAS, the minority group, addresses or defines a minority company, they're not concerned with our ownership requirements. They're not concerned at all. It's just like, hey, this is a company. that's owned by a woman, therefore, and that has a management agreement that indicates that responsible control in the management agreement accrues to the minority participant, even though they're not a licensed architect.
Is the company a licensed architectural company?
Yeah, but they're not a minority licensed company.
Okay, but then again, though, then the problem is at DAS and how they're accepting people and claiming that it's minority owned when it's really less than 51% based on what you're telling me. Right?
That's how
You're
my
telling me that
interpretation is that their definition should include the corporate definition that's used consistently, which has got to do with share ownership, and it's got nothing to do with management agreements. Separate agreement.
So,
Separate
David,
corporate.
in your example, I'm sorry. In your example, then, just to recap, that example you gave, relative to the DCP statutes, that particular top entity you were talking about meets the requirements, correct?
Yeah.
So then when you go over to the DAS side of it and how they designate a minority firm, that's where the conflict is. So in other words, I'm just trying to.
Yeah. They don't look at they don't look at the licensing requirements, not just architecture, anybody.
Okay.
They too, just took like a broad brush and said, 51% control, not even ownership, but they seem to accept just control.
So, David, I think there's one of two things that could happen. One is, and both can come from the ALB, like as a memo or recommendation or whatever. One is that DAS change their, in the RFPs or the requirements, change or specify that by minority and architectural corporation, they match up with the percentages. Or the second recommendation we could make is that DAS change altogether how they credential minority firms. And I have no problem with the ALB submitting one of those two recommendations to DAS.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. The suggestion that I would support is that I guess it would be the second version, I think. But
yeah,
that
try for the second one. If that doesn't work,
because I don't think like my group, construction services, I don't think we can redefine minority policy. We can say, well, we're only accept a minority certificate if it also represents, meets the corporate definition within consumer protection for a firm. So they have to, it's like a both test. We're setting a higher standard for some firm that's already going to show that they have a certificate. If you don't think that's going to cause conflict for that firm that already has a certificate, even though they don't meet, no, it will.
Yeah. And what about, like Leslie said, the inconsistency, if engineers or landscape architects and architects, they're all different percentage. I don't know if they are, but
they are.
Yeah. So then, that's a whole jumble. We want people to be able to be designated minority, and that's 51%. So you're going to get huge pushback on that. So that's why I think, you could try it first, but you might piss people off. Excuse me.
I'm sure
And then if that
get somebody
that's for
sure.
If that doesn't work, then you go to the second scenario, which is DAS, please clarify in your RFPs what you mean by minority architectural firm. And how many of those are actually going to meet the credentials too? Is the next.
It's a small subset.
Too exclusive. That you're going to get pushback there too.
Oh yeah, those people that are going to be excluded that were previously, were taking advantage of that designation are going to be annoyed. But those are all business choices they make. Who's a partner, who owns shares, who doesn't. That's all on them. So we're not looking. We just don't want anybody gaming the situation. And right now, there's that potential exists because there's no consistency.
Right, they shouldn't be. But also, in light of the push for equity, speaking from the AIA side, we are pushing firms to advance minorities and females into leadership roles in their company. We're pushing it hard. And, maybe if this were to, by some miracle, happen at DAS, that would just, further the situation. So this is why I strongly support the ALB.
Well, maybe we should talk about it at our next meeting, about a draft, statement in support, and maybe I can draft something for the next meeting.
Yes, please.
Okay, I can try to make something coherent. All right, well, we'll leave that one for now. We'll leave it on there, Bob.
Hey, David, it's Phil. Hey, I don't think there's anything else that's critical, and the beach is waiting for me. So I'm going to jump off the call. You have a quorum if you need to vote on anything anyway.
Do you put a picture of your feet and a beer?
I did, and I decided the best thing this
Facebook
morning
or
was to not
Twitter?
have the video because I already played tennis and I was a little sweaty. So
Okay. Enjoy
all right, I'll see you
your
guys later.
vacation, Phil. Thank you.
Enjoy.
And Leslie, you don't need to hang with us if you don't want to
Have
either,
fun.
but thank you.
I'm leaving. Ciao.
Phil,
Leslie, you're welcome to stay.
Are you all
Thank
set with me?
We're all set with you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
I'll be
you,
in
Liz.
touch.
All right.
Take
Thank
care,
you, Leslie.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, now the fun part of our meeting, new business. The following candidates have passed the architectural registration examination, are recommended by the Department of Consumer Protection for licensing as architects in the state of Connecticut. Thomas Barker, Elena Konefal, Matthew Jurgens, David Provencher, and Darlene Whitmore. There's nobody else to add to this list. Is that correct, Bob?
That's correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve for licensure these 5 candidates?
motion to approve as
I
listed.
second. I second.
Lorianne seconds. So Twig, motion by Twig and Lorianne seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I believe that's unanimous. So we do have David Provencher. Did Elena make it on the call? And Darlene?
Darlene, I don't know. It looks like some people are on.
Well, we want to, I should say that it's unusual that I know 2 out of 5, but I know 2, Elena and Darlene. I know Darlene's had quite the journey to get licensed. So job well done. And Elena as well, job well done. She's now an architect at Svigals Associates, and Darlene is an architect at JCJ Architecture.
David, this is Gina. Elena's on. I just didn't think she's on screen.
Can we make her
I
promote her?
just tried to do that. I don't have that option for some reason. It just says chat. And the same with Darlene.
All right, well, I can't figure the technology out here.
They're under attendees and I don't see.
I thought you were able to do it before with David Provencher.
I was. I don't know. This Zoom technology, it's frustrating. So
David,
I don't know what.
if you're on, would you like to, congratulations, by the way, from the board. Anything you'd like to say?
No, I mean, thank you very much. This is, as you all know, this is a long and hard road to get to this point, and it's kind of surreal at the moment. But yeah, thank you all so much.
David, who do you work for?
Getting here, I work with a non-architectural firm at the moment, but I've been doing a lot of work with an architect, sort of in my free time, to get to this point. So yeah, it's exciting.
What are your plans?
Thank you. I'm sorry?
Are you planning to start a firm? Are you?
Yeah, a lot of things going through my head right now. No definitive, ideas right now, but certainly I think things will take shape pretty soon.
Well, very good. Congratulations. Bob, any more luck with Darlene or Elena?
No, I cannot somehow I can it only says chat. It does not give me an option. As the host,
Elena-
David,
Elena
anything-
chatted. Thank you.
David, as
earlier.
host, can you hover over attendees and see if there's an option? If you go to attend participants 9.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where that, I think I have to stop sharing for a second.
For future
And,
information,
Under
think-
participants,
hosts.
Yeah, participants, and then it comes up panelists and attendees.
I'll
You
do
see
Darlene's
Alana
at,
and-
allow to talk. Darlene asked to unmute. And,
Right, there you
okay,
go. Promote
all right.
promote them both.
Right, there we got them. Then they're both here, but they're both
There you
muted.
go.
But Elena's now unmuted.
Hi, David. Thank you so much.
Yeah, are you embarrassed?
Not at all.
Not at all. Good.
It's not giving me the option to turn my camera on, so that's okay. I'm not hiding.
Did you have your cards printed yet?
Not yet.
Or do you even print cards anymore?
Had to make sure I passed the vote.
Well,
I'm
you
with
got the
Elena.
vote.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Darlene did say is on board. Come on, Darlene, are you going to talk to us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I didn't get my cards printed either, David. Yeah, I wanted to wait for this vote.
Yeah.
But
Well,
thank you very much.
congratulations. I mean, Darlene, really, I mean, I think how many of the different exams have you taken? Version 3, 4, 5?
I've taken since version 4, and every time they changed it, the one test I had left split into 2. So I've taken the exam quite a bit.
So you should be able to start like a consulting business, to help people take the exams now or something like that. That's
Exactly.
unethical.
Right.
Once you don't share questions.
No, I wouldn't do that. But thanks. It was quite a journey, but I made it. So and
That's
I'm very
good.
happy.
Well, we're very happy for you. And I'm glad you were able to join us today on this call, and you can go back to your management and demand a huge raise now. And that goes for David and Elena as well.
Thanks.
Because that's the way that works, right? Everybody gets a huge raise when they get licensed.
You get a raise.
Yeah. Do you? Well, that's good.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes, you
It's
do.
not
You get
always
a
the
raise.
case. I was being facetious, but that's good. That's very good. All right.
At our firm, you get a window seat and a raise.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to move on. 6B, applications for licensing by waiver of examination. This is for informational purposes. We have nobody to add to this list, Bob.
Let me go back to the agenda.
Or 6B, we have 65
6B,
candidates.
No one. No, that's it. I mean, I have another group coming up for the next meeting, but that's it for
Okay.
this.
6C is also informational. These are applications for a corporate practice of architecture, and these have been all approved.
Yes. And may I, well, maybe we can do it under another item under new business, or maybe just tag on to this corporate discussion. As you know, we're in the process of renewing architect and architect corporation licenses. And again, I just want to report to the board that the policing process that we have in place for firms that are not complying with the ownership requirements and the latest batch of renewals is working very well. I've been, it's been most of my days, the last couple of weeks, half the days have been in communication back and forth with bringing these firms into compliance. Our licensed services division flags the renewals that come in where the ownership interests are not compliant as indicated on their online renewal. I send them a screenshot with some standard language stating that you don't comply with the following, and it's been going very well. And often they don't upload the latest corporate structure diagram. But in any event, I've got a couple that are still active in review, meaning that they are waiting some people have left the firm and others are coming in that don't have their licenses yet, but are in the process of doing so. So it's very productive and it's working. I think it's working very well.
That's good, because this was a big hole before, after the initial application of actually
Yes.
making sure. And I
Yep.
think that's terrific. So it's a good change.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome. I just wanted to let the board know that, I mean, it's, people, they are listening and things change. Firms are definitely responding left and right. So
Anything else? Any comments or concerns of any person present today? Gina, do you have anything you'd like to add from AIA Connecticut's perspective?
No, actually, everything's good. It was good to hear the conversation on the CEUs, but I did want to let you know, we have been, as far as on our end, we have been promoting everyone getting their CEUs in by the end of December anyway for licensure. So whatever changes or whatever ends up happening, then, just let us know. We'll be prepared for. And congratulations to all of the new licensees. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that AIA Connecticut does, we've been doing for the last few years is having a ceremony in January, maybe this year in person, where we provide certificates for first-time licensees in Connecticut. So Darlene, Elena, David, and others that got licensed on our list of 5. I don't mean to, so Matthew and Thomas Barker as well, Matthew Jurgens, will be invited to a reception at AIA if we continue as we have and get their signed certificate.
Also, David, if I could just mention, because this was something that this came up in an ALB meeting probably 2 meetings ago when we first started talking about digital signatures. You asked AIA kind of to take that over. We did. We actually have a webinar that's going to be, our task force got back together, talk to this company. We have a webinar in, I believe it's the 27th or 28th of this month. I don't have it in front of me. That email's going out on Monday to all of our members, but we will also be inviting any non-member AIA, so any architect is invited to attend, as well as engineers that may be interested in digital signatures on plans.
That's great. Thank you, Gina, for doing that, and Angela. Appreciate it.
Excuse
I
me,
think it'll help
if I
the
may.
industry.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. I need to exit now.
Okay, thank you, Twig. We're just at the end
Thank
of
you.
public comment period. But
thank you, Twig.
Okay. Have a good rest of the summer.
You too. We'll see you in
Take care.
September.
See you in September.
There's a song about that.
Yeah.
Comments or concerns of any person present today, in addition to the remarks we just heard from Gina? If hearing none, our next meeting is September 17th. We have a little bit of homework, Bob, I think here. I got to rewrite that memo now to indicate about, with the statutory change. And then we have to issue that memo, which is what
Correct,
we were
the reporting date. Right,
renewals.
we're going to do that. I think we did. It was, and then back and forth we had, David, with the license services unit once the renewal period is over. And
So
just as well.
So that's August, basically.
Right, right.
So I'll redraft the language in there so that we can get that going. And I'll also try to draft a statement from the board to DAS, and I might run it by other board members for their input as well before we discuss further at the September meeting. In any case, move to adjourn. All in favor? All right, guys. Thank you. Having a great summer.
Have a nice summer.
Hey, David?
Bye.
David?
Yeah, Bob.
Just don't remember to just stop the recording.
Okay. Stop recording. Do you want to stop cloud recording?